Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive. 868. Linda Hamilton is more than just a Hollywood actress. She's a survivor, a fighter, and a woman who lived through storms the world never truly saw. To millions, she will always be Sarah Connor, the fearless heroine who redefined what it meant for women to stand in the center of action cinema. But Linda's real-life journey was not about guns, machines, or cinematic battles. It was about something much harder. For 40 years, she was fighting herself. Growing up in Salisbury, Maryland, Linda never imagined she would one day become an icon. Her childhood was marked by loss. When she was just 5, her father, a doctor, died suddenly of a heart attack. That absence shaped her, leaving a void that never fully healed. She often described herself as shy, awkward, and invisible. Acting became her escape, a way to transform into someone else, someone stronger, braver, louder. But the girl behind the mask still struggled with who she really was. In her 20s, when Hollywood finally opened its doors, Linda was unprepared for the chaos that came with it. She got roles, but the pressure was immense. She was hungry for success, yet plagued with insecurities. She would later admit that for decades, she didn't know how to live with herself. Fame amplified every flaw she felt. Instead of confidence, she carried doubt. Instead of joy, she carried fear. And instead of peace, she carried battles that few could see. Then came 1984. The Terminator. Sarah Connor. Overnight, Linda Hamilton went from an aspiring actress to the face of a global phenomenon. Fans saw strength, resilience, and power on screen. But behind the camera, she was exhausted, trying to live up to an image that didn't match her reality. She pushed her body to extremes, trained relentlessly, and demanded perfection from herself. To the world, she was unstoppable. Inside, she was fragile. By the time Terminator 2 arrived in 1991, Linda was hailed as one of the greatest action heroines in cinema history. Her transformation from a vulnerable waitress to a hardened warrior stunned audiences. Women around the world admired her. Men respected her. She had become legendary. Yet while her character grew stronger, Linda herself was quietly crumbling. She later revealed that she battled mental health struggles for decades. She suffered from depression, bipolar disorder, and crippling self-doubt. But in an era where Hollywood never spoke of these things, she kept it locked away, carrying the burden alone. Her personal life reflected the turbulence. She was married twice, first to actor Bruce Abbott, a union that ended in heartbreak, and then to director James Cameron, the man behind the Terminator. That marriage, too, was short-lived, strained by distance, pressure, and Cameron's own complicated life. The divorce left Linda broken, not just emotionally, but also publicly. For years, she felt like she was drifting through life, disconnected from who she wanted to be. As her 40s approached, the roles slowed down. Hollywood, often cruel to women once they reached a certain age, seemed to close its doors. Linda disappeared from the spotlight. To fans, it was puzzling. To her, it was survival. She needed to step away to heal, to find herself beyond the bright lights of the screen. But even in silence, she struggled. Those years, she admits, were some of the darkest of her life. 40 years of confusion, fear, and pain. It wasn't until much later that Linda began to rebuild. Therapy, reflection, and distance gave her perspective. She stopped chasing perfection. She stopped trying to live up to Sarah Connor. And she started learning how to be Linda again. Slowly, she found peace in simplicity. Away from Hollywood, she discovered that happiness wasn't about fame, money, or recognition. It was about stability, authenticity, and self-acceptance. By the time she reached 68, Linda Hamilton could finally look back and say the words she had never dared to before, that the first 40 years of her life were the hardest, the most chaotic, and the darkest. But she didn't say it with regret. She said it with honesty. Because those years, as painful as they were, shaped her into the woman she is today. Strong, wise, and unafraid to speak the truth. Her return to the screen in Terminator, Dark Fate reminded the world of her unmatched presence. But for Linda, it wasn't about proving anything anymore. She had already won the hardest battle, the one within herself. Fans may see her as Sarah Connor forever, but Linda finally sees herself as something far greater, a survivor of her own story. Her journey is proof that life doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. For decades, Linda Hamilton lived in shadows, shadows of her own doubts, shadows of pain that wouldn't let her rest, and shadows of expectations that weighed heavily on her shoulders. To the outside world, she was a warrior who could stand against machines, a woman who represented strength and fearlessness. But the truth she finally revealed at 68 reminds us that appearances can be deceiving. Behind the strength was a long road of chaos, heartbreak, and silent battles. 40 years, almost half a lifetime, were spent searching for something she couldn't name. She tried to find it in love, but her marriages fell apart. She tried to find it in fame, but the spotlight only made her feel smaller. She tried to find it in perfection, shaping her body into steel and her mind into armor. But even that couldn't shield her from herself. Linda admits those decades were the darkest of her life. But here's the remarkable part. She isn't ashamed to say it now. She isn't afraid to admit that she stumbled, that she was lost, that she often didn't know how to keep moving forward. Because in owning that truth, she also reveals something even more powerful, that even the longest struggles can end in strength. Healing doesn't always come quickly. For Linda, it took years of silence, years of therapy, years of unlearning the lies she once believed about herself. She learned that she didn't have to be Sarah Connor every day. She didn't have to be invincible. She didn't have to hide behind toughness. What she needed most was to be human, to accept her flaws, to forgive her past, and to embrace the woman she had become. And so, at 68, Linda Hamilton finally speaks with a clarity that only comes from surviving the storm. She shares her story not to dwell on the pain, but to shine a light for others still walking through their own darkness. She shows us that it's never too late to find peace, never too late to reclaim your life, never too late to start again. Think about it. If 40 years can be lost to chaos, and yet hope can still be found at the end of that tunnel, then maybe there's hope for all of us. Maybe no matter how long the night lasts, there really is always a dawn waiting. Linda's resilience is more than just an inspiring Hollywood comeback. It's a reminder that every person, no matter how broken they feel, carries within them the possibility to rise again. She proves that your worth isn't erased by mistakes, heartbreaks, or lost time. Those things don't define you, they shape you. And in the end, what matters isn't how many times you fell, but that you kept standing back up. Her story is a mirror for anyone who has felt trapped in their own struggles, anyone who has ever thought their best years had already passed them by. Because Linda shows us that life can surprise you, even after decades of pain. The past may leave scars, but scars are also proof of survival. At 68, Linda Hamilton is no longer running from her past. She's embracing it, with all its messiness and pain, because it made her who she is today, a woman of strength, honesty, and courage. She teaches us that the road to healing isn't always straight. Sometimes it takes decades. Sometimes it feels impossible. But if you keep moving, if you keep breathing, if you keep believing, then eventually, the storm passes. If she could endure 40 years of chaos, heartbreak, and battles with herself, and still rise to inspire millions, then maybe you can too. Because in the end, it isn't about living a perfect life. It's about surviving the imperfect one and finding meaning in the struggle itself.